track of what all happening in user space. The second point, it can access all the memory. So kernel space is having the privileged permission to access every memory location, that is the virtual memory locations available in the OS to perform any task. It can access every location of it, kernel space. So kernel space can be accessed by users processes also. So it's not like kernel is restricted to user space. Users also can access the privileged services, but they have to process something called system calls. So system calls acts as a bridge between the user space who are trying to connect to the kernel space. Okay, let's go further. So let us see what is user space. Even here, the 3 points signifies the same. The first one says user space is a set of memory locations in which user processes run. That is, they are the set of memory locations where everything except the kernel space, that is everything except the master phase, every user applications where you open a page, close a page, or paint or something like that, everything happens here. Not, it will not be gone to the kernel space, but it can manage or authenticate the user space. Okay, it is a set of locations where normal users processor runs. So these user space category does not have access to every memory locations, but only the memory locations provided or permitted at the user space. Okay, now some part of kernel space, as I already told you, can be accessed via system calls. So these system calls acts as software interrupts to in kernel space. So whenever a user uses the user space to interact or try to interact with the kernel space memory location, he raises something called system calls. These system calls go and append on the kernel space as software interrupts. And then the kernel space decides to take up the interrupts or not and give the memory location access to them. Okay. So let us see the difference between them. So as you see here, the user space has some processes going on, and the system calls, give me a minute. Yeah, the system calls is trying to communicate with the kernel space, which has disk space and RAM and has all the privilege settings. So this block tells you clearly that the applications run in user mode with limited privileges has the user space. So you can see the user arrow here, which is covering only the user space, where the supervisor is controlling the both kernel and user space together. So supervisor is nothing but the kernel who runs in a supervisor mode and has access to all the locations or sections, so that all the memory, so 2 raised to 32 memory address bars can be accessed by kernel space together, whereas user space is limited. Okay, let us take analogy for an example. Say a house of family with parents and children. So parents acts as kernel and children acts as user. So kernel space are the list of chores that parents take responsibility for. For example, legal services or paying electricity bills or paying the school fee. Those are all kernel space activities. They are all privileged. So where user space like homework from school or eating food from by children, they are all user space activities. So where these permission comes into picture, let us know that. See, the parents kernel supervises upon, that means parents can supervise on homework that is done by the children. So they can supervise them, they can say you're not gonna go play a game, you have to finish your homework. So they have permission or uh, rights over them, whereas the children don't interfere with the parents, do like paying electricity bill, etc. That means they don't want to interfere with the legal stuffs or the privilege stuffs that parents are taking up. So this is a basic analogy to make you understand about kernel and users. So my topic was a very niche topic, so this is what it is. So that's it. If you have any questions or feedback, I'm open to answer.